spirit of staying on time.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Which is what I live for, especially since we can't overlap classes. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start the recording, and then I'm going to do a screen share on my end of your image for the PowerPoint so that the recording has a thing to latch onto in case I make a mistake at some point.
We do not have a PowerPoint for this
I have
one.
a PowerPoint.
Oh. Okay.
You fancy like that?
Cool.
So we are now recording, so I'm going to do the screen share and present it and my blog. Hello, this is the class history of Peerage, hosted by Sir Oroku and Squire Antoinette. This class will go for 1 hour until 8 o'clock. If it somehow runs long, you can find them in the Chaos Wars Discord channel to continue answering questions and chatting there. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, so thank you for that, Leta. We will be talking about the history of Peerage and Belagarth, which is kind of a topic that Oroku and I are really happy to talk about all of the time, because we find it really interesting and important for the continued history of our community. And so we'll be talking about where Peerage in Belagarth started, where it's gone since it started, and just kind of some things that we find important. You'll find some links either in the Discord or in the chat to some documents, one being the Geddon or the Belagarth wiki page on Peerage, Peerage lineages, and then others are just Google Docs to some lineage trees that I've created as part of my squireship. None of them are updated with whatever happened in the last couple of years, because I haven't had time to do that. All the ones on the wiki are updated, though, because Oroku and I try to stay on top of that and occasionally have some help. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or throw up your hand and we'll get you to give us your question. We will be talking about knights, war masters, guild masters, other peerage titles, how you get to peerage, depending on where you are, and how peerage has evolved since it started with just knights way back in the day. So that's sort of what we're going to be talking about. If I start talking too fast, someone please tell me, because I'm really bad at that. So I will try to slow down if I am talking too fast. Oroku, do you have anything as an introduction to the parts that you'll be talking about?
Certainly. First of all, for our presenters, if I have a comment or thing, I will raise my hand, because I am a good fox like that. Secondly, today I want to be talking kind of generally. My interest in the history of peerage really extends to how our peerage also relates to other peerages in our sister and other relation sports. I draw a lot from that. I am active a little bit in one. I follow another. The entire concept of peerage is something that I look at with a very wide lens. So although the interest in our own peerage is of high interest to me, the interest of peerage in other medieval societies is also. So I will be throwing in my 2 cents on that. So yeah, I guess we can get started. That's all I got to say for that for now.
So where did Peerage in Belagarth start? Well, it didn't start in Belagarth, because when we became a thing in 2001, we already had knights, and they had squires. So most of our peerage, or knights, because that was all we had at the time, started in Dag. So if you look at a lot of lineages, anyone knighted before 2001 or in specific parts of early 2001, before we split off in June of that year, were knighted under like a DAG system. We just took that and we didn't make anyone re-squire or re-get knighted when we became Belegarth. So everyone who was knighted prior to June 2001 was knighted in DAG. So that's like Sir Kirian, who was knighted in 1994, was knighted in DAG, things like that. So that's where our peerage started. It started in DAG realms prior to our splitting off and becoming Belegarth. Since then, it's evolved a great deal to include other types of peerage, and we are working on a process to make sure that everyone views those on an equal footing, similar to how the SCA views titles of an equal level on an equal footing. And that's pretty important. And so that's where our peerage started. It started in DAG, and then kind of just sort of popped over when we became our own thing in 2001. So if you look at some of the lineages on the wiki, or specifically the Middle Earth lineage, where most of the Western Knights and War Masters are and Dragoons are also sort of come from, that started like in the early 80s in Middle Earth, which is a realm in Illinois, which still exists today. Lots of those knights aren't still active, so some of their dates are 1980 ? Because Oroku and I couldn't find them. Because record keeping, not very consistent up until recently. And then other lineages like Numenor is an offshoot of the Middle Earth lineage pretty early on. But then you have other lineages that are offshoots of other places and other knights. So like the Avalon lineage, which is also linked in one of the lineage trees I created, started pretty early on. You have a couple that started kind of right when we were becoming Belegarth. I think Wolfpack might have started like 2001. Their lineage, which has grown since to include knights from all over the place, and not just Wolfpack. And then you have lineages that started last year or the year before because someone from a realm got knighted. So it all depends sort of where we're titled, where you are, where your lineage sits. Oroku.
For the record, Wolfpack, Sir Gabriel, first knight of the Wolfpack line, was knighted in 1996.
Oh, so before 2001. I was wrong.
It's okay. I have a cheat sheet, so.
That's true. You printed that off.
I did.
So where you sit in lineage is often dependent on the realm you belong to, on who you're squired to or apprenticed to. So like our masters' lineages are brand new. Like they're growing every like year, but they're brand new. So they're smaller than, say, the lineage that Oroku and I belong to as a knight and a squire, which comes from Middle Earth for decades beyond where we sort of fall in. Oroku.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to attempt to briefly, those who know me know I don't do things briefly, talk about actually the beginnings of the line of Middle Earth. This is my Middle Earth belt flag. Sir Durmar was kind enough to gift me one because I am a member of that house as a member of the lineage. So basically in 1985, King Errant, the rightful king of Middle Earth, knighted Sir Beowulf the Dreamer. So our entire lineage begins with a king. Sir Errant also appears twice in the lineage because he was a king, so he knighted someone, but then eventually somebody knighted him, and it gets very confused with multiple names to the same people. It's difficult, but pretty much we can trace, and the thing that makes Belegarth relatively unique as far as record keeping goes is it's very easy outside of certain lineages that sprung up organically, which is a legitimate thing. For the most part, we can say that Sir Beowulf the Dreamer, aka Sir Geoffrey of the Hillside, was born in 1985 in Middle Earth, and he was our first knight, and he was made a knight by King Errant, the rightful king of Middle Earth. And that is where I would say about 80%, if not more, of our knights can trace a lineage to in one form or another. So,
No, I have fries.
Fuck. Okay. I just haven't
No.
fries that I.
Oh, okay.
can eat.
Sorry, I gotta go back to teaching.
Do you have gravy with your fries, Antoinette? Because that would be amazing.
Sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't muted.
It's okay.
No, I don't have gravy with my fries because I can't eat
Okay.
gravy because I'm allergic to that. I will mute myself.
Oh, so that is really where it comes from. From Middle Earth, it spread basically to Numenor, and then kind of out from there. If you go to the known peers of Belgarth from the top, it is possible to kind of follow the line of succession as people spread out throughout the country, and you can see how that happened. The second thing that I want to talk about is one, how lineage are created briefly. The thing about Belgarth, as you know, is we have no standard way to do this. Basically, what happens if someone wants to declare themselves a knight, they can declare themselves a knight and they can make other knights. The important thing to remember is that if you do so and do such, that it comes with all of the lovely baggage that comes with being a knight, which is a whole talk unto itself. There are a couple of gift knightings, which I think are important to recognize. My own lineage is a gift knighting. So, well, not my own knighting, but my own lineage is a gift knighting. So when Utah from the Knights of the Watch, the Knights of the Highlands of Chaos knighted Sir Turin Aldrich in 1996 under Eraduoth. Now, he did not squire under the knight who gave him his title, but it was a knight who granted him his title. The Knights of the Knights of the Western Flame. Sir Anastasia did not squire under Sir Parr, but Sir Parr elevated her to the rank of knighthood, and thus knighthood was brought to California. So in both the case of Utah and California, we share in the fact that that is where our knighthoods come from. It makes it obviously no less legitimate, but it is an important part of history. Yes, Squire Antoinette.
That also is the case for the Knights of Errant. I don't want to say Arendor. The Iowa. Sir. Oh God.
I know of him. Yes.
Yeah. They.
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah, they were. Oh, that knight is. Oh God. I cannot remember his name right now. He has acorns as his symbol. He was also knighted heroically, and thus that lineage started that way, along with Vigil. Vigil was also knighted heroically, but is part of the Numenor lineage. And Warmaster Forkbeard was Warmastered heroically, as well.
So there are a lot of ways to come to knighthood, which is or peerage for that matter, in any way, shape, or form. And the really important thing to understand and to just put it out there, as it were, is as titled people and as titled people and for those seeking titles, it is important for us and for our populace, we serve you, to remember that we are titled, not entitled. And so therefore, although we have a lot of fun with this aspect of our community and things, you know, we are also just Belgrim. So please don't, you know, as you watch this, please don't take us as us, you know, lording our titles over you, because that is not the case. But it's a lot of fun. And Belgarth is probably, in my looking around of things, the society that I've seen with out of the big three, well, big four, I guess. So it'd be the SCA, Belgarth, Dagorhir, and Amtgard. Amtgard probably has it too, but it has the most public record of a lineage list. There is a list of knights for the SCA. There are a lot of them. The thing with their lineage is because their knights are made by kings, it doesn't necessarily record who knighted who. So, or what knight they served under, or what king they were made by. So we have the line, as it were, for pretty much the entire society since it started. Amtgard may have something like that too. However, I've not seen it. And Dagger here, I don't want to talk about that because it makes my head hurt.
Amtgard does have one. I have been approached by a number of their scribes to be like, hey, how did you guys do that? Can you help us do that? So I've had a number of discussions with a number of their kingdoms in like the Midwest, working on kingdom-specific lineages, but I don't think Amtgard as a whole has one. And yeah, Dag hurts my head. If you think our records were hard to swim through, their records are worse.
And the thing about titles and peerage is it means different things to different groups, to different people, to different things. In some areas, this is a Dagger here example, knight is actually a rank in a unit. So you will work through a unit, you will be knight, you will be whatever title you choose, and that is the rank that you hold. It's kind of anybody's game. Zypher, thank you. Gayla, we appreciate that. So yeah, next talking point, go.
So for those of you who are wondering like how our peerage evolved, so Belegar started from Dag, as we know, and we just had knights. There was no real other title. Middle Earth had some wizards, which I just recently found out about, which were non-combatant knights, and that somehow died out somewhere. And it's taken me a while to figure, like, I still don't have a list of who that was or when it died out, but apparently that was a thing for a little while, which has since died out, which is kind of cool for me personally to have found out about. But then other groups started doing things. So like a lot of the monster titles like Caudine and Witch Doctor and Makut are monster specific. Makut's pretty horde specific, and they didn't necessarily consider themselves part of peerage. I consider them part of peerage because outside of the fact that many of them have just done this thing because it interests them, they're also largely upstanding members of the community. Like, I don't know any of the witch doctors who also don't put in a ton of work for their area and their community. I don't know any of the Caudines who don't put in a ton of work for their area and community. I don't know a single Makut who hasn't worked their butt off. While their trials for Caudine and Makut are pretty specifically fighting, they also don't get to that point without a large amount of service behind them as well. I mean, neither do our witch doctors, even though their titles are pretty heavily like lore specific. And so while they may not consider themselves part of peerage, I think that they are, and have had many discussions with a lot of them on that topic, and all of them have different opinions on the matter. We have now War Masters, and they started with Sumatai, who was titled by Cedric, ? Thank you. Yeah, by Cedric, and started a very monster-specific lineage. All of the War Masters are monsters. Some of them consider themselves peers, and some of them don't. That's, again, another discussion, but if you look at the lineage, they're part of peerage in that, like, historical sort of way. Whether they consider themselves peers or not is another discussion, though I think a lot of them do and a couple of them don't. And then we have the Dragoons, which is just a different word for knight, I think, and they have some different expectations of their squires than other lineages, and that started with Ralamir, who I think was also knighted by Cedric. Pretty darn certain. And has proceeded to be sort of a different yet similar type of thing. And then we now have guild masters, which is a level of peerage. We now have 3 guilds. We have masters in 2 of them, and we're working on the 3rd. That's a work in progress. So our peerage has evolved since its conception of just knights, include a varying number of different groups of people and different representations of our community to be this buildingly robust group of people all sort of working for the betterment of the community in their own way. So the way that like I work for the betterment of our community is different than the way a different squire or apprentice to a different person would work for the betterment of their community, but we're all sort of working towards that goal of the betterment of the Belagarth community, and that's where I find Peerage to sort of all of us be at the same level. Oroku.
Cool. I'm going to touch on what Squire Antoinette briefly before bringing up another one that I need to keep reminding myself to include. The thing, when people ask what makes a peer, I think the difference between being a peer and a good Bellegrim is the fact that what we do is public. That's the big thing. What I do is public. What I do reflects on all of my other peers, and I do that knowingly. I do it willingly, and I think that's a very important distinction. Secondly, I want to mention Kinsmen briefly. Kinsmen are another peerage that I believe are active in Belagarth. Briefly, back when the way back in one of the first Dagger here realms, I believe it was Gwened, they started to be a knight, you had to be of Christian faith, and that was part of their knighthood. That is how they wanted to run it. That is what they did. However, there were non-Christians who had peer-like qualities, who wanted to be recognized as peers, and thus the kinsman, which is the overall term for it, was created. I do have a link to the kinsman lineage on the peerage page. They are also one of the lines of peerage that also go way back. So, I mean, even farther than we do. After Queen Reign, Sir Tristan Opwen was born in 1982. Go ahead.
There are no active kinsmen in Belagarth. The realm that had active kinsmen seeded from Bel in like 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't think there are any active kinsmen in Dirtamirian right now.
Okay, excellent. I just know I was in chats trying to get lineage lists figured out at one point, so. But yeah, however, they're also on our list. So I've got more if you don't.
Does anyone have any questions thus far for Oroku or I? I think there might have been Anij, but I don't know that they're active in any Bell realm. I think they're cross gaming. Not that that matters, because we do recognize a lot of cross game knights. That's another point for a bit. But I do think one did, but I haven't heard anything from them since. I do keep in touch with a lot of the like heavily cross-gamed knights and stuff, so that we can, like, if they want to be recognized like in Bell, we can work on that. But yeah, I haven't heard anything from them since. I think they were at an Armageddon last year, like the year or two ago. I don't remember. Oroku and I actually have a pretty hefty job tracking down people if they don't like remember when they were knighted. The lineage page took what 3 or 4 years for us to get to a point where we're like not constantly making updates, because we're constantly finding new people. So now we have a better way of keeping history. We have event pictures and we have videos that go up, and we have people keeping track of these things, wherein when Oroku and I started building that page out, because it was pretty lackluster when he started, and then I sort of hopped on with him, we like we're digging through old websites that had like 19 something something, and we're like, okay, 1980, 1990, what year are we 19 question marking here? Like it took an awful lot of digging, but now we're at a point where we keep far better track of things. And I don't know if that's because him and I are like, hey, we're going to keep track of this whether you like it or not, or like people have started to care a little bit more about what's going on. I get a lot of questions from a lot of squires going, hey, Antoinette, can you go over my lineage with me so I know what's going on? Is not a question I got before a couple of years ago, but is a question I get a lot now. It's a question I get from some knights who are like, Antoinette, do you remember what year I was knighted in? I'm like, yeah, I do.
If not, I know where to look.
And so like keeping track of that has become something that both Oroku and I care a great deal about. An offshoot of that is I attempt to keep track of everyone's heraldry, but that is a different duck and also very difficult. Oroku, if you want to go on to your next point.
Cool. So in speaking with lineage, I wanted to share some stuff about my lineage, not directly what my lineage is, but one of the really important things, in my opinion, is you know, your willingness to let people know that you're a peer. For my line and for many more night lines these days, we follow the SCA's example of an unadorned chain and a white belt. Not all lines do that. That's totally understandable. You know, they do it, but that is a really, really good way to let people know that, hey, you can talk to me. So in addition, I just wanted to share a few of the other things and display 5 of my belt flags. So you already saw this one. This is my Middle Earth belt flag. This is I am a member of the House of Middle Earth because they started my lineage. After that, I have my own belt flag, which has my pronouns on it and my symbol on it, so people know who I am. Even if you don't, you will know who I am and what my pronouns are. I have this one, which was hand embroidered by a good friend of mine. This is the flag of my knight, Sir Pyra, whom I squired under. I also have the flag of Sir Tethian, who I had the privilege to elevate, as he is one of my peers. I wear his colors now. And then I have this flag, which is one of the knightly orders I am a member of. I'm a member of 2 knightly orders, and that's one of them. It is really a lot of fun to a point RP being a peer. It is, although we can occasionally take it overboard, wearing the vestments of our office is really, really cool. More importantly, it is actually doing what it takes. So we are talking about peerage lineages. The after every single, so pretty much here's how it goes. Normally during an event season, I and Squire Antoinette do our very, very best after every event to try to do a general question. Between her Facebook and mine, we either hit everyone or are in circles with everyone to try to find out what happened at that event. That is relatively important. So all of the major events, obviously we're not trying to hit all of the regional or local events, because these things do happen there, but after every major national event, interrealm event, I should say more appropriately, we try to put out a call. Did anything happen? I also have a minor point in working on the squires and the squire and the acolytes list, for lack of a better term. I forgot what I called it. And also trying to keep those up to date. Thank you. Well, so there's the squires list, and then there's actually a list for the 2Bs that I made.
Oh, the retainer list. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the word because I'm still thinking about sailing. And the retainer list, and just trying to keep those up to date. I think it's really important that we do keep those up to date, because this is what, if someone knows where to look, they can go and find out. This information is important. And then once we do that, we just work on trying to keep them up to date and following. Shoot.
The monster titles have also created their own page, which I think collectively, I believe War Master Hakan and Witch Doctor Galia keep updated, which is like their specific titles. And their, I mean, we all try. Keeping everything on the wiki updated is like a gargantuan task. And so I do believe they try to keep that page updated, which is linked on the main Peerage page, but they have opted to keep a separate list. And if needed, I'll occasionally go, like, because I found out something, I'll go in and update it, or I'll let Galia know that it needs to get updated. But so the monster titles kind of keep a separate page for their own choices, and that's their choices to do so. So that's also a page that is there for similar purposes.
Early titles and are very sometimes difficult to find out where they came from. Although you may be in the list under someone, depending on how far back we're talking and what's going on, there can be questions which will probably never be answered. One thing that's important to understand too is by this stage, it is really looked upon by peers and their peers to see if you are a peer or being a peer, that you're acting as such. That's to a point almost as important, if not more important, to how you got your title. There are several instances in our list where you can look at and see that that lineage started at a personal level. There are several realms that have done this. Normally overseen by other peers, but sometimes that didn't happen. And we have to remember that at some point, someone decided that they were a knight or a king, and it just kind of went from there. So while Squire Antoinette and I do take this very, very seriously, it's also also needs to be understood that, I don't believe that, keeping track of who's what is definitely something that's going to hold anyone back in working towards Peerage or becoming a peer. It's just, this is our history, and it's very, very important that we keep track of this, because if we lose it, we lose a huge portion of those of us who are wandering around being like, I'm a Knigget or a master. So it's important that we follow on with this and keep it going. See, where are we? We're halfway through the hour. If you have questions, it says right here on the wiki page, if you have questions, please speak with Antoinette or myself. We are always open for these questions and really any questions that you have. We do our best to be approachable, and we do our best to be available. So
I especially have no real social life, given I work in a remote community that has very little to do after I get off of work. So I am generally available for questions. There was something we were going to talk about, and now I'm trying to remember what it was.
Well, this is the joy of shooting from the hip, though. But this is what we do best.
True, but there was something I said we were going to cover later, and now I can't remember what it was.
I remember you saying that too, but I also do not remember what it was.
Go us.
Yay!
So the one of the other things that we've started to do that is pretty different from other foam fighting sports, with the exception of the SCA, is we have a peerage council now. Sir Kalarn and I were going to work on one for Ockfest, but I don't think Ockfest is happening, so that may not be a thing, but I know that we have one tomorrow. And during that Peerage Council, which is run by Sir Rem, we work on things like different topics. So I know that Squire Scuba Steve is talking about the biopic group that he created for Belagarth and why it's important to have those discussions and a place for those people to congregate and talk and discuss things. So I know that is a topic we are covering. I think Gorlock is covering see a need, fill a need, which is something Gorlock likes to talk about and is very good at. And I think we're talking about something else. I just don't remember what it was because I can't remember the last time I looked at the schedule. But so that's a thing we've been doing, and that Peerage Council is open to anyone, peer or not, to come and have open discussion about stuff. The first Peerage Council, one of the main topics of discussion was why is there a growing dislike of peers in our community, and how do we fix how they see us? And that's always sort of been something, because for a while there was a growing dislike of people in peerage positions, and I think that is slowly changing. I remember what I was going to talk about, so we'll do that next. And so that's something that has is growing, and I know the SCA does laurel meetings and knights meetings and similar sorts of things at their events. And so I'm glad that we've started doing that. And that's less of a, hey, we're a bunch of peers and we're going to talk about peer stuff. It's more, hey, we're a bunch of peers and we want you to know that we're here to hear your needs from us. So like anyone can come to that meeting and go like, this is how I'm viewing this issue. How can you as peers help me fix this thing? Or like make this thing less bad. So that started as a way to communicate between the peers and the community, which I quite like. And we were going to attempt in the Midwest for the first time this year, but I year. So that's definitely something. If you are interested in more topics, tomorrow the Peerage Council is at 1 p.m. Yes, after my thing that I just remembered we were going to talk about, Brother Maynard, we will talk about that question because yes, they have. So the next thing I was going to talk about was, oh God, please tell me I did not forget what I was talking about. Oh, recognizing peers from outside of the community. So if you look at the peerage page on the wiki, down at the bottom, there's a list of peers who have been recognized by Knights of Bell as peers in our community, or by peers in our community have recognized these peers from other communities. Most of them are knights from Amtgard who cross game, with the exception of Sir Blitz, who was titled by an amalgamation of peers from different aspects of the sport. And we literally couldn't find anywhere else on the page to put him because he just didn't fit anywhere. So we put him down there with his distinct permission that made the most sense to him. So in the case where we have like Sir Breeder and Sir Fitz and Sir Loptar, who are knights or peers in Amtgard, but who cross-grain quite heavily, have been recognized, I think, mostly by Sir Parr as knights or peers in our community. There's also a I'm working with a number of the cross-gaming DAG Darkon knights that are like, hey, we cross-game a lot and we'd love to be there, but we're just working on how to get them there effectively. Because some of those Darkon lines are even more convoluted than like King Arian knighting someone and then that someone knighting King Arian, because that wasn't confusing at all. So there is a way that heavily cross-gaming peers from other sports are recognized within our community as peers, especially when they've contributed heavily to culture like Sir Breeder does with his garb, and similar Sir Fitz and Sir Loptar with their sword prowess and that sort of thing. So there is a distinction, or I guess precedence for that. Sir Oroku, would you like to cover the heroic knighting question?
Why, certainly. Thank you. So yes, heroic knightings are a thing. We have had several. In general, Antoinette and I have been pretty good about recognizing when they were heroic. So I mentioned earlier that Sir Anastasia was heroically knighted by Sir Parr, elevated to the rank of knighthood, and began the Knights of the Western Flame. Sir Zypher was heroically knighted. I actually couldn't scroll up, so I had to remember what it was. Was heroically knighted. Sir Vihil was heroically knighted. We have a couple of war masters who heroically knighted, although in my discussions with them, you don't get heroically war mastered, you're just war mastered. However, the idea that we as a community or we as peers can elevate people to peerage, regardless of any formal relationship, we simply recognize them, is a really important thing. And realms have done it, individuals have done it, and it's important. There can be a problem possibly of perception, but if you're doing what you should, the issue of perception isn't normally an issue. How I've seen that taken care of also is that if you're raised, then you have basically a peer squad who's overlooking your progress, who's making sure that it is what it is and that you're doing things publicly and things like that. That also helps. But yes, heroic knighting is definitely a thing in our community. And it has happened several times since the very, very beginning. Yes.
If you were looking for a specifically interesting story, sorry, my brother is interrupting me with Pokemon. Yeah, cool. You evolve your Pikachu. Awesome. I'm teaching a class. Sorry about that. A specifically interesting story around heroic knighting would be the story around Dame Black Betty's heroic knighting. It was absolutely hilarious. So she knew something was going on, like that entire Armageddon. She's like, you guys are plotting something against me, and like most of us knew that Sir Durnar was heroically knighting her at Feast on Saturday. She did not, and we were in her and I and Amy were dealing with our hair in the girl shower house, and she was like yelling out, Antoinette, what is it? This? Is it this? Is it this? I'm like, and she did not even get close. Getting heroically knighted or knighted at all was not even on her list of things that could possibly be happening in like 2 hours. And then over the radio came, Betty, we have a feast emergency. Something has gone horribly awry. And this was Squire Inc. And Betty's like, y'all are too calm for something to actually be going her or like epically awry. So like the three of us mosey on over to the shower house. And like AB and I made sure she was in like top feast gear and like looking fly and stuff. And then she was just sort of encircled by all of her friends. And Durnar came out with a sword, and she like started to slightly panic that like she was gonna get run through with a sword, and then he knighted her. And before he knighted her, we handed her this giant stuffed fish and 2 handles of jerry and some fried chicken. And Ursine had made her heater shield, which is like a leg of fried chicken and a cooking utensil crossed with a sword. And we had made her like knight's tabard thing, like what Oroku is wearing with her like chicken symbol on it. And like she was floored. She had absolutely no idea what to expect, didn't even get close in all of her guessing. And I mean, she spent hours guessing, going, Antoinette, what about this? What about this? I'm like, no, you're not even close. And like after that, she's like, this was not even on my radar. I'm like, I know, you spent all week asking me what we were planning. And so like that is probably one of the biggest like, or one of the only heroic knighting stories I know that like spanned an entire event. It was somewhat hilarious. I wasn't around when Vihil got knighted, but I understand that that was pretty interesting, and I believe Galia could probably tell the story about when Zypher got heroically knighted. And I mean, the War Masters who were just sort of War Mastered, were just sort of War Mastered at a Chaos Wars, and that was that. There wasn't really any story around that. Yeah, so it was hilarious. Not all heroic knightings have a giant hilarious story behind them. That one does. I think just because it's Betty and we had to do something to drive her crazy. But yeah, so like lots of knightings period have some pretty interesting backstories. Like Dragoon Thayer had to fight a bunch of people and then play a concert without like stopping to breathe in between for his Dragoon trial. So that was pretty interesting. And so like in general, different lines, different knights are gonna knight their people differently. I know that the witch doctors have a pretty interesting like lore telling that gets super in depth and is super enjoyable. I know I enjoyed Salamander and Galia's witch doctor trials quite a lot because the stories were very interesting. So it all depends on where in Peerage you are and what the expectations are behind your thing. Like one of the Caudine X trials is like how many people you can kill in a single day or a single round of fighting. And Shai killed some like 300 people, and has only been beaten by Kalika, who killed some like 400 people. Um, and so like different things and the stories that come out of them are different depending on where you are in Peerage. So they're all gonna be different, but equally as important to remember and like celebrate when they happen.
I'm going to talk briefly about the dark notes in our lineage list. If you want to go find some of these, you are welcome to, but I'm not going to speak to them directly because I do not believe they merit it. However, there are people who are on our list who are no longer titled fighters within our society. They were removed. However, it is important to understand that history, which is why they are so noted. There are also some deceased people that are noted as well. So that is a thing. However, it is important to remember that as they live their lives publicly, so was their removal from that life publicly. So that's also important. Like I said, if you want any details, you can go find them if you want. But all I will say is that if you look through our lineage list, you will find people who are no longer titled fighters within our society for very good reason. So that is also something that we unfortunately occasionally have to keep track of. And that is one of the less enjoyable parts of this keeping the lineage list. Oh, we have a cat. I can't hear you. I think you're talking. Oh, she's talking, but
There
I
we
can't
go.
hear her.
Sorry. My cat decided he wanted attention, probably treats, while we were talking about lineage. So we've got about 15 minutes left, a little less than 15 minutes, about 13 minutes actually. So if anyone has any other questions or like something you felt like Oroku and I didn't cover that you would like more information on.
I feel like we need the on hold music right now because that would be amazing.
Do, 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 do. I also apologize in advance if you can hear my cat purring. He decides the microphone is where his face needs to be. Yeah, it's not necessarily chatting specifically about being peers. It's chatting about issues in the community that as peers, we either can help with or should be helping with, or like the first Peerage Council when our major topic of discussion was why is there a growing dislike of peers? What are we doing to make people look at us negatively? And how do we fix that? Because the goal of us isn't necessarily to be looked at upon negatively. So it's an open forum for discussion. Anyone can come, anyone can talk about anything, and like moving and like specifically major issues in the sport where we can work as a group of people who are peers, or going to be peers, or are just people in the community that want to work towards the betterment of whatever it is we're talking about. Go ahead, Oroku.
So one thing I want to touch on what Antoinette just said. So I have been involved in a lot of the peerage councils. I run peerage councils when I can at my local events. And one thing that's really important for me about peerage councils is I think one of the greatest weaknesses of peerage in Belagarth is that although we see ourselves completely as individuals, and in fact we as a group hold the ability to make great change and to do good things as a group. The you don't hold any power over me because I'm me mentality, unfortunately, has led to a lot of the disliking of peers. And the Peerage Council is a chance for peers to be, and for people who are just, just people coming together to act as a group. And it's one of the rare times when you can get all of the peers together and to talk one-on-one, face-to-face, and or in this case virtually, to talk about issues that affect all of us. And that's really, really important. And that's one thing that I hope that continued peerage councils will do, is to understand that we're a society, and we're as peers, we're a society within a society, but includes every single one of us. And that's really important. So,
and that's completely all right, Galia. I know that a lot of monsters who hold different monster titles don't necessarily consider themselves peers, but that doesn't mean the meeting is any less open to you. If you guys want to come and just listen or give your 2 cents, because the way you guys view what's going on in the community is different than the way we might view what's going on in the community. So the Peerage Council isn't necessarily just a bunch of knights and squires and war masters and apprentices sitting and talking. It's open to everyone, and anyone can bring up something as a topic of discussion. We usually keep it to an hour, so we're not sitting forever going around in circles. Sir Rem does a very good job about making sure that we stick to that hour without necessarily going over. And I mean, other Rem would have the list of topics we've covered over the years, but I mean, other topics that we've discussed are like volunteering and how we as peers or people need to fill a need if there's a need. What position do non-coms have in peerage outside of the guilds at this point? That was a topic Dop covered, because it's pretty close to him, given he's got 3 non-combatant squires. And certain things like that. Like, the topics have been fairly broad, and I mean fairly open in terms of like what's being discussed and who's sharing that discussion, that section of the meeting. Overall, it's been pretty effective in the West. We haven't had a peerage council in the Midwest yet. I don't know if it will go over as effectively, given there are a larger amount of voices in the Midwest at any given time. And also, our biggest event is Oktoberfest, and there's so much to do already. So we'll see how it goes if we can have one. Kalarn and I plan on running one at the next Oktoberfest that happens. So we'll see what happens. Does anyone else have any other questions in the last 8 minutes, or are we good to let Brother Maynard prepare for his bread making class?
furthermore, if you have any further questions outside of this discussion, or you watch this and you have questions, feel free to contact us. Literally, that's why we're here. When I speak about being a public figure as a peer, that's true. Unfortunately, my time is also your time. So if you need my time, then I will happily give it to you. So, and if I don't have time, I'll do my best to make time for you. So that's why I'm here.
All right, Leta, I think that we're good.
Sweet. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And Brother Maynard is having his bread without an oven. It has pockets class in 6 minutes. So feel free to stick around and watch that with us. Or leave and come back in 6 minutes, either way.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I am going to go feed my cat now, so he'll stop trying to eat my food.
Also, for myself, if you want to know what my thoughts on peerage and other topics are, I have a long history of live videos that I've done on my personal Facebook page. Go to my videos section of my photos, and you can scroll through those.